This is Computing Up, conversations about computation writ large with Michael Littman and Dave Ackley. This episode was recorded August 20th, 2025.
Great to be back. It feels like it's been a long time. And in fact, today's theme will be haven't seen you in a really long time. In fact, Dave, you haven't seen me in so long that as soon as my video came up, you're like, oh my God, you look old.
Yeah, I say that to most people I know,
Oh, that's good.
but but it's true.
That makes you popular.
And I also think stints in the government age you 2 for 1 at best,
Certainly that
or
that is the
worse.
Obama thing. Well,
Yeah,
but in terms of like getting to see people you haven't seen in a while, I thought it'd be really
Yeah.
fun for us to talk to Ben Kuipers, who you guys have intersected with various times over a very long period of time, if I'm not mistaken. So
yeah.
Ben, first of all, thank you so much for agreeing to come and talk with us.
Certainly. Look forward to talking with both of you.
Outstanding. So Ben, maybe you could just give us a sort of mini version of your bio so we can understand, first of all, what path you've taken to here, and second of all, what are the ways that you've kind of intersected with Dave and, if necessary, me over the years.
Okay. Well, very long time ago, I was headed for MIT as a graduate student in pure math. And I was going to be as pure as the driven snow and
Mhm.
never touch anything applied. And I went and just on a total lark, I took this course which was a graduate introduction to artificial intelligence taught by Minsky and Peppert. And the
Yeah.
skies opened, and I realized that this is what I had been looking for all my life. That I'd always felt that the problem of the mind, how the mind can possibly work, was one of the most exciting scientific problems of all. I mean, comparable to the problem of life or the problem of the universe or stuff like that.
Yep.
And so when I went to college, I was all excited to take a psychology course. And I got to college and I took a psychology course, and it was this crashing disappointment
Mhm.
because the rigorous parts weren't interesting and the interesting parts weren't rigorous. And so I figured, okay, well, I guessed wrong about psychology, but I loved math, so I would go and be a math major. And so I was. And for graduate school, I was going to MIT and I took this course. And I realized that we weren't ready to solve the whole problem of the mind, but the way computational methods were able to model phenomena of the mind was an entry point into having the mathematics that you needed to do the mind.
Amen.
And I sort of compared that with the creation of differential equations when Newton and Leibniz created calculus. Because before that, if you wanted to do physics, you wrote insightful little essays. And after that, you could
Mhm.
make precise predictions. So, so that was very exciting. And so I became kind of a phantom graduate student in the math department and hung around in the AI lab at MIT. In the course of figuring this out, I decided that the problem of the mind is obviously way too big. So there were lots of interesting problems, and the problem of common sense knowledge seemed to me to be the most exciting one. That's still way, way too big. So then I realized the problem of space, knowledge of space, seemed to be really fundamental.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a final frontier.
it's a final frontier, right? But even that was too big. And then finally, somebody recommended that I look at the cognitive map, how you travel around in a large environment that you can't see all of. You only see locally, but the structure is global. And you build a map, and it helps you make plans for how to get from one place to another. And it becomes really clear how knowledge of space, of navigational space, plays a really important survival role for creatures. I mean,
Mm.
not just humans, but animals and
Sure.
so forth. Um, And so that's what I did my PhD thesis on. I've continued to do various bits of work on that over the years, and that's been pretty well received. So that's and you guys at the NSF have helped fund that, which was all very nice. Thank you. Um,
Check.
so
Just to be clear, so
yeah,
you no longer have to thank me for that because I'm no longer at the NSF. I guess this is our first recording that we've made since then. But
Right.
I am free and clear of my federal entanglements, except there's certain things I'm still not supposed to say, and I'm not
Yeah.
allowed to talk to them for a year
Wow.
because I
yeah,
assume they're just sick of me.
Uh-huh.
that's okay.
Well,
That's okay. Well, I'm not asking for money anymore. So
great.
I've over the years I've asked for a lot of money and I've gotten a fair amount of it, and it's been very helpful. And I hope it's a good investment. So
So you finished it at MIT, and I looked at Wikipedia, and you crash landed eventually in Austin, and there is a Wikipedia gap between MIT and Austin.
and you were in that gap.
That's
Precisely.
right.
So how did
I
that
have
work out?
I haven't actually played with Wikipedia myself, so I should go in and update it, or maybe get a student to do it, or something like this.
Right.
Um, but no, I was looking for a position, and I wanted to stay in the Boston area. Um, I did a postdoc. I actually got 1 year of DARPA funding, jointly with a cognitive scientist named Al Stevens at Bolt Beranek and Newman, and we were working on cognitive map stuff. So the end of that year approaches, and I start looking around for other money. And so I talked to this agency and that agency, and I discovered the only agency that's really excited about my work on cognitive maps was a defense agency that wanted to build cruise missiles to follow maps to get to somebody's house and blow it up.
Right.
Oh, interesting.
So I say to myself, is this what my life's work is supposed to be for?
Yeah.
The answer is pretty obvious. No, this is
Well,
not what I want to do.
it depends on whose house now.
Well,
Go ahead.
it actually doesn't.
It shouldn't.
There, there are anyway. Well, we
Yeah,
can
yeah.
go there in some other conversation.
Uh,
Um, so my friend Peter Solovitz, who was running the AI in medicine effort at MIT, had been trying to recruit me, and so I go up to Peter and I say, "Peter, sign me up. I'm prepared to do that." I figured, okay, I've had a good run with cognitive maps. I'm gonna do I'm gonna work on this AI and medicine stuff. And meanwhile, I got a job in the math department at Tufts University.
I've heard of it.
And so I taught for 5 years, 6 years, for a while at Tufts University. And meanwhile, it was in the math department. They didn't have a computer science department yet.
Right.
Um, and so I went, and working in Peter's group, I started collaborating with a really good nephrologist named Jerry Kassirer. And we started looking at how do expert physicians reason about the mechanisms of the physiological mechanisms of the body. And I figured, this is clearly some sort of causal process. And I had had thoughts about causality, and let's go and figure out how the causality is working. But we started adopting Newell and Simon's methodology of recording discussions with experts as they solved problems, thinking aloud
Think aloud. Yeah.
transcripts,
Familiar.
and then create verbatim transcripts and get down there and word by word
Boy.
analyze this thing and figure out what's going on with the knowledge representations.
And reduce it to first order logic.
No, reduce it to whatever it took.
Yeah.
But first order logic is often not what it takes.
Yes.
Mm.
Um, yeah.
Go.
So, um, one of the first things I discovered is that it wasn't causal networks. It wasn't sort of states and causal links. Um, what it was something where people would say things like, if you eat too much salt, then your body is going to retain water. And so the less water will go as it goes through your kidneys, less of it will get excreted as urine, and so it'll stay in your bloodstream. When it stays in your bloodstream, then the blood pressure will go up, and then if the blood pressure is high, the heart muscle is going to work harder, and when it works harder, it'll get stronger and bigger, and that's actually not good for it. Um, so, but the whole language of this was of increases and decreases, and I mean, monotonic relationships, saying more water means higher blood pressure. Higher blood pressure means more work for the heart. Um, so it was,
Which sounds causal, yes?
Well, but
well,
it's all
yeah.
sounds like it's all deltas. It's all
Ah,
changes off of equilibrium, and that makes causality a little bit more complicated, I would think.
And it's all in terms of qualitative relationships.
Right.
mm.
Monotonic
Higher,
until something happens.
higher,
Monotonic until your heart
lower.
explodes.
Yeah, right. Ah.
Yeah.
And so it turned out that Johann de Cleer and Ken Forbes were doing things like that. And I had some other ideas about how that ought to work. And so I came up with a qualitative simulation algorithm that I called QSIM. And that got a fair amount of attention. Um, and I think I have huge respect both for what Johann did to sort of create that whole field and what Ken did with his qualitative process theory. Um, and I have a book on that stuff. Um, now, so in the course of this, I said, well, okay, what am I doing? I mean, have I sort of abandoned the cognitive map? Have I abandoned common sense knowledge? And I said, well, no, not really. Common sense consists of a number of different branches. And one of them was common sense knowledge of navigational space. There's common sense knowledge of other kinds of space. But there's also common sense knowledge about how physical mechanisms work. And in particular, a lot of mechanisms, like the physiology of the body, work by shifting equilibria and control systems. And so this kind of qualitative reasoning was really good for thinking about control systems. Um, and so that took me a few decades, and the National Science Foundation and NASA and a few other places chipped in a little bit to help out. And I had a bunch of wonderful students.
Well,
Now, in the
go ahead. Go ahead.
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say you're jumping past Tufts now,
Oh, I
and
am.
so I need to inject my Tufts Ben Kuipers story
Okay.
before we push on, because you taught me Lisp,
Yes.
and
Whoa.
I took Lisp from Ben
God's
Kuipers.
language.
Exactly, and one of my most salient memories from freshman or sophomore year, I don't know, whenever it was that I took it, uh, uh, was that I wrote some code for one of the assignments and I handed it in and the code worked, and you marked it up and gave it back to me, and you basically only made like one comment. I mean, there was other comments; it was fine, but there was only one criticism, and the criticism was you really wanted to use nconc instead of append. Otherwise, it will be viciously inefficient, like that. And I felt so tagged by that. It was It's this amazing thing that for no reason. But I was in the grip of computing and programming and master of the universe and the
Yep.
power of being a programmer, and nobody can gainsay anything I do because it works. God damn it! So here we are, and then here you are saying no, it should have been nconc, which I didn't. I had skipped over nconc if we had even learned it at the time.
Right.
Like that. And so that stayed with me for a long time. And I mean, as you can tell, it's stayed with me today,
Yes. Yes.
30, 40, 50 years later. Uh, um, I did have a little bit of edge about the guy that did that to me.
Yeah.
But then in the end, it was all fine. And then eventually I was a teacher and I was doing this to other people.
Yeah.
And they were having the experience of thinking, oh my God, I am the master of the universe. I can program anything. And
Yeah.
then people
Right.
saying, well, yeah, actually, that's just the beginning of the story. That's
Yeah.
not the end of like that. So
That's
that's
right.
that's my Ben story
Nice.
Very
from
good.
Tufts.
If you use append instead of nconc, you're copying the
The
whole
whole
structure.
tale. Yep.
Every time you add something onto the end of this list, you're copying the whole list. Give me
Yep.
a break. You're wasting time and effort. Don't
Okay, well,
don't
so wait,
ever do,
before we leave this topic, so then how is NCOG different?
oh, nconc, you got this big long S expression, and
Sure.
you basically say, let's go find the tail of that list. And I'm just going to put,
I
instead of
see.
the null at the end, I'm going to put a pointer into the next pair,
Splice it on to the end.
splice it
Got it.
onto the end. And
Like that.
and so if you think about the computer's memory as this huge data structure, lots of times you can simply copy the whole thing, but lots of times you can reach in and just modify it.
Right.
Got
And
it.
now these days with functional languages and so on, where we are encouraged to think in terms of
Yeah.
streams, but the language helps out to avoid all that unbelievable copying, or at
Mm.
least most of it by being lazy.
If it
Yeah,
does.
yeah, I know. Even as I was saying it, I was
Yeah.
saying, yeah, yeah, except when it
Yeah,
doesn't.
right.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
All
okay.
right. All right.
I'm
So
glad that we
Okay.
got this, that cleared the air with respect to NCOG. Thank you.
Yeah.
yes, yeah. I
Yes.
just needed to get that off my chest. So now we can go back to cognitive maps and spatial computing and the unification of. I mean, so
Okay.
it
Well,
sounds from what you're saying so far that
mhm.
that you were a classic GOFAI expert
Yeah.
system symbolic guy and that sort
Yeah.
of thing, exploring all these things, taking that the idea of a concept is something that you can reify directly as a gen sim, as a symbol
The
somehow,
data
uh,
structure.
Yeah.
as a data structure. Yeah,
As a data structure.
right.
I think you have frozen. Oh, no.
Like that.
You were.
So how do you feel about that? I mean, so does that fit into the arc? The idea of moving beyond that and thinking about emergent, distributed, all that kind of stuff, or do you think there's more mileage that we haven't gotten yet from symbolic stuff, or what?
Oh, absolutely. So I am unapologetically a GoFi guy. I believe that understanding the content of the knowledge is a critical part of what we do. Understanding this the methods, symbolic and neural network that we use to represent that is also important. But I see that as the kind of tools in our toolkit. And the real question is, what's the nature of the knowledge in our heads?
Mm.
And how do we express that and capture it?
So
So
there's at least two times that you've kind of rewired my brain. Like
Mhm.
I read a thing that you wrote, and it's like, okay, now I'm a different person. Now I'm going to see things differently. The second one was in the on the topic of essentially a kind of boy, I don't know, synthetic mind. The notion was that you'd start with a system that was going to be exposed to various kinds of inputs, and little by little it was going to start to make sense of it. And it started
Yeah,
very sub-symbolic, but eventually became more symbolic. And that to
yeah,
me seemed really important. That you weren't GoFi, good old-fashioned AI in the sense of we'll just assume the world is parsed as symbols and it's handed over to the computer and we just process it. You were going to go all the way down to signals and start
Yes.
turning those signals into things that had more structure. So
Yes.
is that sort of in your mind how you ended up kind of unifying these perspectives? What pushed you to not just accept, well, symbols are, they just are, and so we could just use them?
Well, yeah, this whole notion of knowledge engineering, which got very, very popular with a lot of people, is sort of assuming that you want to have the symbols handed to you. You want to have this structure produced by a process of intelligent design, as opposed to having a learning process that gave it to you. And so I said, how do we how do we figure this out? Where does it come from? Where does the symbol come from? Where does meaning
Mm.
come from?
Ooh.
Um, Now, actually, in order to go there, let me finish off the tough story and take myself to Austin and then get to this story, because there I was at Tufts, collaborating with people at the medical school, collaborating with people at MIT, writing papers, giving talks, all this stuff, just thriving away, raising money. And everything was going wonderfully. And I came up for tenure and I figured, wow, why should I pay any attention to that? Because I'm
I'm a
just
shoe
thriving
in.
along.
Yeah.
So, and then the math department at Tufts decided not to give me tenure.
Whoa.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So that was a
Okay.
surprise.
Uh-huh.
That
Well,
was a surprise.
I wondered. I wondered.
Yeah.
And
Now,
go.
there's a longer story about this, and I'm happy to talk to you
Yeah.
offline if you want. But I sort of said, well, I've got a pretty good opinion of myself. And
Healthy
And I think
ego.
that's pretty valid.
Right, right.
it
Empirically
runs in this
justified.
it runs in this field. So there you go. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe these guys are right. Maybe I'm right. Maybe these guys are right. Well, I decided I was right.
It was
So
close. It was close.
It could have gone either way, but this is the
Uh,
direction that it fell. Yeah, I mean,
now,
and they're mathematicians. What do you want from them? Like they're the
they
stuff that
did
yeah,
you were
they do what they
doing.
could know. Right.
yeah,
You
right.
were out there.
Long story. So I go on the job market, and first I had a chunk of money from grants, and I had some good friends at MIT, so I awarded myself a sabbatical and spent the next year at MIT. Um, and they transferred the grants. I had a lab there. Peter Solovitz was very welcoming and helpful. Um, and I had a wonderful year and wrote up the paper on QSIM that got a lot of attention. Um, and applied for various positions and ended up through a process getting a faculty position with tenure, an associate professor position with tenure at the University of Texas at Austin.
Sweet.
And so I went down there. And what I realized as I thought about this in retrospect is this was one of the best things that had ever happened to me in my professional life. And it had it had come as a crashing disappointment. And so I think that's a valuable bit of career advice. And I've certainly given it to a bunch of students, that sometimes something which comes as a crashing disappointment is actually one of the very best things that could have happened to you.
Right. It's
And it
like
certainly
the
was true for me.
you have to fail at the current mountain before you can even approach the next one, the bigger
That's right.
mountain, something like
That's
that.
right. That's right.
And I would think qualitative causal reasoning would have to be able to deal with stuff like that.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, that's good. So I have a footnote in my memory about what happened to Ben. That is now settled, and it was the best thing that had ever happened to him.
Right.
And yeah, and well, so that's great. So you want to just push on with the conceptual story of the stuff you worked on, or we should jump
Sure.
around?
Sure. So there I am at at Texas and doing a lot of stuff with QSIM and qualitative simulation. Meanwhile, a student comes up and says he really likes the cognitive map stuff and he'd like to do it on a real robot. Now, I didn't have money
Oh.
for a real robot, but I said,
Yeah.
let's do it with a simulated robot. And we had a bunch of discussions and came up with a clever idea. And the clever idea turned out to get some NASA money. And then we bought a robot, physical robot, and things went on from there. Um, Somewhere along the line, I had told myself that I really, really didn't want to get myself into studying control theory and dynamical systems because
Yeah.
that was a whole mathematical area. You had to be very sophisticated, and I would just leave that for other people. Well, once we had a physical robot,
Things are different.
it turns out the world comes and takes you by the scruff of the neck and it says, who cares what you want to work on? This is what you're going to work on.
Right. Well,
And so I had to do a bunch of stuff on that. And so that led to a bunch of interesting stuff. Um, in the course of this, I think it was Ron Rivest
Oh, wow.
during some time when I was at MIT had posed a learning problem where a simulated robot would get a set of sensor streams and have an action stream. And how could it learn to structure the problem? And so I said, whoa, this has got to fit into my cognitive map picture. And so we made a simulator. I mean, I'm collapsing a bunch of
yeah,
stuff
yeah.
that happened then and later. Um, but we made a simulator that simulated a robot with a ring of sonar sensors, and all it had was the sensory input with no prior knowledge about what that meant and how it reflect what the world was like, what the sensors were like, what the effectors were like, what its body was like. And I said, this is horrible. This is stupid. How can anybody ever solve it? But of course,
Busted.
babies solve it all the time.
Yeah.
I mean,
Every baby.
maybe once. Well,
Each baby, maybe only
each
once.
baby. Yeah. Okay. Got it. Got it.
Yeah, right, right. Yeah.
Uh,
Well, and if as you watch your baby do this, they do it over and over again with
Mm,
different things.
interesting.
So this was obviously a really, really important phenomenon. And let's go and spend some time doing that. Um, and since I already had a pretty good theory of how the navigational space would be structured, this would be, I already knew what the target was going to be. And I said, suppose we start with this raw, uninterpreted input, and we know where we want to get. And so we developed a bunch of methods for doing that.
Yeah.
cool.
So,
So,
yeah,
maybe let's pop up a little bit higher,
sure.
and we can come back down to it. So, I mean, it seems to me, and it's, the neats and the scruffies in AI, and the logic-based people and the robotics-based people, or however you choose to divide it. Uh, um, Obviously, the brain and the mind does both. Obviously, the solution to intelligence has to involve both. But there are these extremely different emphases that lead to different research problems and lead to different strengths and weaknesses of the resulting systems, and so on and so forth. And so you say that you're an unapologetic GOFAI guy,
Mhm.
but you were willing to go study dynamical systems. You were willing to go study sensor, whatever, clustering, however it is that you're going to find stuff and so forth. Do you have a feeling at this point about what the unification from these things is going to look like, or is going to have to look like? I mean, I saw when I was preparing for this chat,
Yeah.
you had this paper on dual citizenship
Mm.
between a robot controller, an absolute,
Yeah.
actually literal robot controller of a wheelchair, and
Hmm.
then a more classical qualitative reasoning system that you were welding together with like remote procedure calls or something like that. And so can you unpack that a little bit, and say what you think the big picture is on getting those stuff together?
No. Now, let me explain why.
No, and I'll tell you why.
Right. So I think the problem of the mind is at least as hard as the problem of physics. And the problem of getting computational models to address the mind, we've been working with that for roughly 70 years. And we made the breakthrough to modern physics about 350 years ago when Newton and Leibniz created differential equations, and we're still not done. So
Well, so
this
wait. Let me cut in. I take it by you saying that you must be rejecting the reductionist approach that whatever the mind is, it's just physics. So how can it be harder than physics writ large?
oh, I'd say that's like saying, I mean, medicine, biology is just physics.
Right. That's what the
I mean, that's
physicists would
just,
say, right?
well, that's just stupid.
Okay, then. Well, I'm glad we settled that.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, there's a whole different ontology that you need in order to think about biology. And it's sort of easier when you think about chemistry that you've got atoms, which clearly are in the domain of physics, molecules, which physics can barely hang on to with their fingernails. Then you get tissues and cells and tissues and organs and so forth.
And
Um,
the physicists
and
say that we just need to work on it a little more. Well, that we'll be able to rewrite out that language of chemistry into language of physics. We'll be able to rewrite out the biology into chemistry into physics and so forth. Do you buy it?
no,
Neither do I.
yeah.
I just wanted to
I
make sure
just
we're
think,
on the same side there.
yeah, I just think that that's that kind of reductionist position is like saying, okay, in my computer there are ones and zeros, so I could do everything with
Right,
ones and zeros.
right. Boolean
Now,
algebra, all we need.
obviously, you cannot. I mean, in principle, it's all reducible, but it's not reducible within any comprehensible way.
Right.
So there are ontology. We only have a limited ability to think about complex things. And so the way we do it is by making simplified models
Right.
of things and reasoning with those models. And we go through a really impressive process of creating models, reasoning with them, finding their limitations and errors, and replacing them with better models. And that's science. Now, it turns out it's also common sense, and it's
Sure.
also engineering, and it's also a bunch of other stuff.
It's life.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so jumping ahead, so here I am realizing that I've been working on common sense knowledge with navigational space, then with dynamical systems and qualitative reasoning. And then I started looking at objects and actions and consequences. And eventually I started saying, well, what about things like theory of mind? That's a kind of common sense knowledge. Um, Now, around this time, I started saying, well, AI is starting to take off and people are getting all excited. And
Wait, what
they're
year was
talking.
that?
Ah, actually, 2012,
Okay, all
because
right.
I mean that's the year that that the computer vision paper
ImageNet, yeah.
ImageNet came out and revolution not ImageNet itself, but the thing. Yeah.
Right.
Um,
Stuxnet.
what stuck? No,
No, not Stuxnet.
that's different.
I said
That's a
AlexNet.
Also interesting,
AlexNet.
but different. AlexNet.
AlexNet.
There you go.
AlexNet. Yes. And then and so that obviously we got deep neural networks and that was changing the world. It clearly rocked the computer vision community back on its heels.
Yeah.
This was before we had gotten the large language models. Um, but and people were starting to worry, what's going to happen? Are we going to need ethics? And
Right.
I said, "Ooh, ethics. What is ethics anyway?" I mean, there's philosophers who do that. So I actually took a course from an eminent ethicist at the University of Michigan, and um, it helped a lot, but not enough. And I said, I think this is another branch of common sense knowledge that is just like the cognitive map is knowledge of the spatial structure of your environment and your ability to navigate around within it. The ethical knowledge you have is a branch of common sense knowledge that helps you decide what's okay to do. Planning knowledge helps you say, what can I do to achieve my goals?
Right. What do I want to do versus
Right.
what can I do?
What should I do?
Mm.
Um, and so what in the world is that? And so as an AI researcher, I felt like the challenge here is to say, can I understand the content of ethics, the content and the purpose of ethics to the point of saying, why do we have it? Why is it important for survival? And I think I have a pretty good notion of that. Um, And so that's sort of what I'm doing now that I've let the University of Michigan off the hook about paying my salary.
Very convenient. Yes.
Very convenient.
I mean, well, that's great. I mean, when we go emeritus or emeritus like, it seems by then we're supposed to be thinking about like curriculum and stuff like that for the next generation and all. But I think
Big,
talk I
big
think
questions.
yeah, I think thinking about ethics is a great alternative to the curriculum questions. And yeah, so again, I looked at your CACM viewpoint, focusing on trust and trustworthiness, and what does
Hmm.
that even mean, and how would you even know who should you trust, and so on and so forth. And I think that that's absolutely right, and I think the prisoner's dilemma, the classic example, if you think about it only in terms of yourself and you don't think that there's value in being trustworthy,
Hmm.
then you're biased towards going for the quick gain. And
Hmm.
we see a universe full of that here in this country in the last several decade or two. And what trust allows me to use a simpler model of the world, making planning and acting much more feasible. That's a quote.
Yes,
Uh,
that's absolutely
uh,
right.
and
Whoever
that
said that was just
Yeah,
brilliant.
genius.
hey, I wrote it down. I saw these pearls, like that. One thing that didn't sit quite right with me, and so now I got
Hmm.
you here. Maybe I could
Yeah.
get you to react to it. The framework that you were using, I mean, in the sense that it had couplings to the philosophical approaches and the deontological and the
Yeah.
normative and the utilitarians, all that stuff.
Yeah.
They take the idea of agents and distinct agent identities for granted. That we have, I am a person, you are a person, we're two separate people. We can make
Hmm.
those be atomic units in our theory, in our model,
Hmm.
and we never have to think about you and I becoming glued together like a human centipede or anything like that, and becoming a single agent. But I wonder, and we can if we say that ethics, a large part of ethics has to do with relationships between individuals and groups, relationships between
Hmm.
individuals and populations, individual
Hmm.
societies, then when what the definition of an individual is absolutely totally key. It seems like it's too
Hmm.
important for that to be primitive. That has to be covered in the theory. What determines the edge of an individual like that? And
Hmm.
so I feel like could there be sort of enlightened self-interest, the idea of thinking that, I do good stuff for others, and maybe because I'm thinking about tit for tat, or I do good things for my kids because I share genes with them and any all that stuff. But suppose those are all just examples. And the important point is that my definition of identity is the patterns that I work to preserve. Whatever I work to preserve is part of I from my purposes, like that. So the prisoner's dilemma would be, do I see that other prisoner as part of me? Do I see that we
Mhm.
are really a separated at birth single organism? In which case, I can be completely selfish. but
Yeah, right.
but now it's selfish for the both of us, rather than being forced into thinking you must be altruistic and that's somehow different. And maybe we could make progress if we could think in terms of an expanded I, an expanded notion of self, rather than thinking in terms of something beyond selfishness. Does that make any sense?
Yes, it does. It makes some sense. I have a way of saying that that's a little bit different,
Mhm.
but I think it really captures an important bit. Um, I do think if you work at it, you can distinguish between me as an individual and me as the extent and of all my relationships and so
Uh-huh.
forth. Um, because I think it's helpful to think about those things somewhat separately, even though they are in other ways
A
unified.
spectrum, yeah.
Um, Now,
And
one of the people that I've learned a lot from is a guy named Michael Tomasello, who is a primatologist and developmental psychologist studying apes and young children. Um, and he's got a really nice um, book called Becoming Human that
oh,
summarizes a lot of his stuff.
nice.
And in that, he says about 400,000 years ago, humans evolved the ability to do what he calls joint intentionality, and that is pairwise cooperation. So many animals will cooperate in certain ways, but once they achieve their goal, they'll just selfishly try to grab all the rewards for themselves. Monkeys do this a lot. Um, but people will, I mean, if you and I are chasing an antelope, then maybe one of us takes on the role of flushing them out of wherever they're hiding, and the other one waits and stabs them or bonks them and captures the antelope. But then we share the results. Um, and so there's a cognitive capability which Tomasello describes, and I may be adding my own description onto this,
Yeah.
as instead of having two agents, you create a third virtual agent, which I might call we.
Uh-huh.
And although we remain agents, we are also elements or aspects of this we.
Components,
And,
yeah.
and the
Mhm.
plan, the cooperative plan, is for we to capture the antelope. And we can do that by, chasing him this way, capturing him with this hand. Um, and we then get the fruits of our labor, and we divide the spoils and give them to each of us. And then the virtual agent evaporates.
So
Um,
yeah, or it doesn't, or we remain. We have a history of sharing now,
right?
and who knows?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 absolutely.
And then he goes on to say, actually, that 100,000 years ago, we seem to have done another bit of biological um, evolution to create what he calls collective intentionality, where we is the whole group,
The tribe.
the tribe.
Yeah,
Now, when this is happening, I mean, the whole society was basically a tribe of a few dozen people, maybe.
right.
Um, but being able to say, we do things this way, for example, or we are planning to um, harvest the crops, and this is how we're going to do that. Um, if you if you do have the cognitive capability to have those concepts in mind, then you can cooperate with people. Cooperation is a positive sum activity. So we can gain much more benefit than we could as individuals. And the
As long as we can trust them, as long as they're not
well,
gonna stab us.
yes.
Right. Yeah, yeah,
Now,
yeah.
but let's suppose in one of those societies you somehow didn't come with that brain part. You were not able to conceptualize things that way.
Sociopath.
People would quickly recognize that you were actually not a useful cooperative partner, and you would be sent away.
Let's
Now,
hope so.
at
Yeah.
that time in life, you would be sent away, and you would die basically.
Right.
So there's a pretty strong evolutionary um, um, gradient there.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Well,
But
it
as David's
sounds,
pointing out, there's issues with free riding, right? And I think so
yes,
much of the weirdness in society right now, I think, stems from some people's exquisite sensitivity to the free rider problem. The sort of notion of
yes,
that they're taking advantage of us, right?
yeah,
We're trying to do the right thing. They're taking advantage of us. We have to do everything we can to prevent that.
yeah,
yes,
yeah. And yeah, to me, so it feels like writ large, it feels like the difference between serial computing and distributed computing, like that. That the we is a distributed computation in a
yeah,
fundamental important sense because it's a we, one of us could die without the other one dying. If
yeah,
it was just me, then if I go, the entire computation goes. And
yeah,
so the key aspect of distributed computation is that pieces may come and go while the computation lives or dies as well.
right, yeah,
And so it sounds like what we have tried to do in the last 100,000 years or whatever it is,
hmm
as we have become better at distributed computations, we have gradually, evolutionarily, for at least some of it, gathered up mechanisms to help strengthen what
yeah,
distributed computation needs, which is awareness of free riders and a sense of fairness and so forth, and voila,
hmm
ethics,
hmm hmm
like
hmm
that,
yeah,
in order to support distributed computation. And, that makes a lot of sense to me.
yeah,
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 the question now becomes for me is, how can we reinforce that? How can we
yeah,
spread that? How can we, I mean, because the low level crass, everybody's in it for themselves, so I am too. That's very compelling from a certain point of view.
yes,
So
it is.
how do we fight that? Ben, tell me.
Well, well,
Why
let me
can't we
tell you
just
one
get
thing.
along?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Now, the metaphor of distributed computation has clearly rung a bell for you,
Yes.
and it really helps for a certain audience to get this idea across. But I think that's a small fraction of the
It's
audience.
it's nichey. It's nichey.
Uh, so, but I do think that what we do need to do is that, and to sort of explore the various aspects of what it means. First, what does ethics do for society? What does it do for us as humanity? And what does it do for the societies we live in? And by analogy with macroeconomics, where you're saying, what do economic processes do for the overall economy? The other side is microeconomics. How do individuals make economic decisions? And that part of the analogy is microethics.
Hmm.
How do individuals make ethical decisions?
So not
So I think,
individual versus society necessarily, but individual to individual. That would
yeah,
be the micro case.
so that would be the micro case. Although
Yeah.
it's also, I mean, if you and I are cooperating about something, then we have created this virtual we. Now, how is it okay for me to behave while participating in this we? And the things you're raising about free riders and so forth, we do have to have ways to discourage free riders. Now, do we kill them? Do we punish them? Do we impose a cost? I mean, what is the level of sanction that you put to discourage free riders without destroying your society?
And
Um,
where would you
and
look to answer that question? Where
right.
would you even investigate to say, should we kill them? Should we give them three strikes or whatever it is?
Hmm, hmm, hmm.
I mean, it seems to me that that is probably going to be pretty implementation specific. So we're not going to necessarily get much leverage in an abstract case
Yeah,
about how hard should we punish or whatever it is.
yeah,
So much as having to look at some actual deployed systems, like say the United States in 2025, and
right.
ask how can we move forward from here? Not that I have an answer.
Well, now this is something that I'm spending basically it's the focus of my life these days. So what I'm trying to do is to say, where are pieces of this puzzle where I think I might know what to do? Because of course it's such a big puzzle and there's so many pieces and there's so many things I don't know how to do, um, that the notion of being able to answer that big question is just totally unreachable. But if we can answer a lot of little questions, and I would actually love to enlist you guys in reading some of the stuff that I've written and saying, oh, you've forgotten this obvious point, or yes, you think this is obvious, but it's actually obviously wrong. And sort of helping me with that, I would be outrageously grateful.
well, cool. I mean, in the last couple of years, and this is partly because of SFI stuff, uh, I have realized that I am, well, it's neat versus scruffy also, that I care about bottom up engineering.
Hmm,
I care not about what do we want, but what can we have that's
hmm,
robust and stable and all this kind of
hmm,
stuff.
hmm.
And that there is a tremendous amount to be learned about what we can have that will be
Right.
robust and stable and so on and so forth. That if we just come from the top and say, what do we want? We're going to end up with bullshit. We're going to end up with insecure,
Yeah.
fragile crap like that, like
Hmm,
we
hmm.
have, like that. And so I've become, on the one hand, less tolerant of abstract approaches that do not come with a demo, that do not
Hmm,
come with an actual implementation of some aspect of it like that,
hmm,
because
hmm.
it seems like all the important shit you punted like that. Give me a
Hmm.
demo and then we can talk, because then there's a machine of some kind that we can argue at the architecture of and so on and so forth. And so I mean, I feel I want to convince Ben. I want to convince Ben to let go of GOFAI. Let go of the symbol. That all that crap is going to emerge. It's all going to emerge. Bottom up is going to put it underneath you so that there's no surprises left at the symbolic level. It's just going to be celebrating, beating the drum and saying, "Here we are. I'm smart. I'm smart. I'm smart." And the symbolic part of it's really doing nothing about that, except, all right, maybe one little thing, go left, go right at the end of the street, that kind of thing. So I don't know. Look, like I said, I looked at that your ethics viewpoint, and that was the kind of reaction I had. It was that, Ben, oh yeah, he's really looking at the right stuff, but he's still holding on to this symbolic, abstract, top down kind of thing, and it's holding him up. What do you think?
I hear you talking.
And
I, I'm not. I think the stuff you're saying is a compelling, deeply held feeling for what you would like to see from
as
expressed perhaps
as requested.
as perhaps from the top down. And
Yeah, well,
um,
certainly, you could finish, but your response to me, to hoist me on my own petard, would be, show me the demo. Show me the demo, Dave, of how you're
yeah.
actually going to do this bottom up engineering that does and
So
so on and so forth. Yes, I confess.
now, so I feel like a lot of the stuff I do is bottom up in the sense of looking for a piece of the puzzle that I understand well enough to start putting it together. Um, but it's also top down in the sense that before I start building something to do something, I want to know what I'm doing and why and what it's supposed to accomplish. Um, and I'm not, I mean, I agree with the limitations of both of those approaches.
Sure.
Um, and I would actually, I don't think the medium that we're in at this very moment is one that lends itself to a sufficiently deep discussion of those things. And I would be happy to discuss it at more length.
Oh, I see. Just this little chat today
Yeah, I
The
thought you meant
medium
like
of this.
America in
would not
2025.
fit on the edge of the envelope.
Yes, right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
got it. Yes, yes, yes. Well,
yes.
that's for sure.
But but I think if perhaps I could send you a couple of short documents and you would give me your feedback on it, um, or maybe say, what if don't you think that the following bit could be implemented in something like the following way?
Right.
Um,
Right. I would love to see an implementation of blah,
right.
showing blah,
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever it is. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can't promise there'll be deep reactions, but I would love to look at your stuff
Okay.
like that and see what thoughts it stimulates,
Yeah. Great.
because that's really all I can offer. And that would be fun. Well, Ben, we still have a few minutes, but we're kind of running out
Good.
of time. I just wanted to say, this has been super fun. I mean, I really enjoy coming, well, just really connecting with you. I mean, I
Yes.
know
Yes. This is great.
knowing someone as a teacher, you don't really know them. It's a job. It's a job. They're teaching you LISP, or whatever it happens to be, like that. And so, I think all roads lead home in the end. So
Yeah.
you can go top down, you can go bottom up, you can go any combination of the both. It's just never stop moving. It's just never get stuck thinking that it's got absolutely got to be this or else it's crap. And I guess we all get stuck sometimes, and that's when we need the giant disaster that you mentioned earlier to get us off of that hang up like that and getting running smoothly.
Yeah.
I guess I figure for my money, the top down issue, the fundamental abstraction top down issue, the biggest, most abstract thing is already solved. So I don't need to spend time on that, and I can turn around and go back to doing bottom up stuff. And for me, the biggest top down, the solution, all of that stuff is that intelligence and computing systems and living systems are the same class of systems. And we just misunderstand. We think that they're different for superficial reasons. And once we understand them both deeply enough, we'll see that they're the same class of systems. And
Mhm.
the living system aspect of it is that living systems are systems that work to preserve their patterns. That's it. That's the definition of life. Systems that work in the physical sense to preserve their patterns. And they use computation to decide what work to do. And it's the attempt to preserve their patterns that give semantics to what the work and the computation means,
Hmm. Hmm.
like that. And so that's what we're all doing. And the question is, what patterns do we want to preserve? And if we started there, if we started with the what do we want, rather than the what can we do or something in the middle. All of this stuff, it feels like it starts in the middle. So like the beginning of computation was the beginning of life. The most important thing to understanding is the beginning of life, not the beginning of the universe, something like that. And because once you have life, you get these incredibly biased statistics. Everywhere you look, it's life. It's like Jesus. So if you're going to make sense of the data that you're getting, you have to put life first. So I am this computational paganist that you can get the idea. I tend to go overboard with it, but uh, um, I think You are a kindred spirit. Like that. Even
Yeah.
though coming from the GOFAI side of things. Uh, uh, and I don't know.
Well,
So what have we not talked about? Have we?
I
I,
think Michael was trying to say something.
I was hoping to get because there was an interesting moment early on when Ben was talking about how that this motivation to understand the mind, right, and really sort of
Yeah.
crack that puzzle, and that and I very much resonate with the idea that this is one of the fundamental mysteries of science that is, yeah, like you said, right up there with how does life, where did life come from, and you know
Hmm.
what are we here for, what are we doing, what is, how does the universe work? Like this is absolutely one of those. And when you were describing it, you talked about how it's important to build the system, right? And Dave,
Hmm.
people couldn't hear this, but Dave was nodding vigorously. This is very
Yeah.
much the way that Dave sees the world, is that if you can't build it, then you know your words don't mean much to me. Like you have to
Hmm.
show me the demo, right? So
Yeah.
and I lately have been starting to get very uncomfortable with the combination of those two ideas in the following sense.
Hmm.
And
Hmm?
maybe it's just that I don't trust humans, but
Hmm.
what it boils down to is the notion of, I get it. Like I do think this is a fundamental scientific question that like deserves a tremendous amount of our energy. And I think that, and I do agree with the idea that if you can't build it, you don't really understand it. But what happens when we build it? What happens when we build it is that we have all these industrialists who are going to be like, great, now we can make more life and we can own that life and we can
Yeah,
basically be, you know, slave owners in a sense,
yeah.
Yeah.
and just basically position ourselves to take over all the resources of the planet. And I'm not loving that outcome. And we're seeing, like, we're not really seeing that as an outcome at the moment, but we're seeing people jockeying for position to get the spoils of that. And I don't
Right.
think they're going to get there because I don't think they have the right recipe for general artificial intelligence at this moment, or artificial general intelligence. But
Yes.
but nonetheless, they've shown all their cards, right? They're like, well, this is what we want to do when we have that power. And I'm like,
Right.
oh
Hmm.
crap, we should not give them that
We
power.
should we should
So
not
where do
give them
you
that power. Yes.
so where
Okay.
are you guys on that? Like the scientist in me wants to do this, and the, I don't know, human in me wants to avoid this.
Yes.
I don't know how to live with that contradiction.
Well, I mean, very quickly, particularly when you're talking about things at a societal level, you find yourself talking economics. And a lot of people are big fans of Adam Smith's classic parable about the butcher, the baker, and the brewer, um, and saying that they all work to maximize their own personal welfare, and society's welfare works out. Um, and that's actually a very evolutionary picture. So it's very Darwinian, because it's saying you get a whole bunch of people trying to meet different needs, um, cooperating through the marketplace, and if and then each seller provides something of a certain quality at a certain price. Each buyer decides what they can vote for in that combination. And if you, as a seller, are dominated by a different seller, the
So be
buyers
it.
aren't going to vote for you, and you're going to be in trouble.
This is
Now,
voting with
th-
your pocketbook, right?
this is voting with your pocketbook.
Which,
Um,
and that sounds exactly right to me, except Darwinian evolution is controlled by the laws of physics, and the market is controlled by the laws of man. And so the laws of man can be changed, unlike the laws of physics.
well,
And that's
actually,
what
no.
people
That's
are doing. That's what people are doing. They're changing the laws of the market. Everything goes to me.
no. Let's be more careful about that,
All right.
because the marketplace is driven by the laws of what individuals want. They will go and shop for what they want.
If they
Now,
can, if there's
in
not
the,
guns keeping them away, etc.
hang on.
Okay.
Um, now, um, and it depends. sort of Adam Smith's parable depends on there being a lot of sellers and a lot of buyers, and the sellers choose who to buy from, and the buyers choose what to make and how to price things in the hopes of getting sellers. And it's easy to show that the equilibria are actually improving over time. The problem is that this particular equilibrium mechanism is vulnerable to being hacked in a variety of ways. And so,
Monopoly.
and so
Uh,
if you have governments that impose rules on this, and here's where the rules come in, if they can succeed in imposing rules, then you can preserve the nice optimization properties of markets. But if you can't, then what happens is people who get a temporary advantage dominate the marketplace, drive out the competition, and um, the system no longer converges to the optimal values.
right.
And I think that's the thing that we're currently seeing. So at a certain point, I've actually written a recent essay, very short essay called Free Market Anti-Capitalism. And the idea is that once upon a time, I thought because I really love negative feedback and the concept of evolution, I must be a capitalist. And then a friend of mine pointed out, no, that actually you're a fan of the free market because the free market is that feedback system. But capitalism is working to control the capital, the resources that you need to build the tools to participate in this thing. And if people accumulate too much power,
To kill the free
then
market.
they kill the free market.
Right.
And that's what we're seeing.
Uh-huh.
And so it's the fact that we have a good feedback mechanism to control this collective action, and people who say they're in favor of that are in fact destroying it.
Okay, so
Michael.
I'm not sure I am connecting the dots correctly here because I asked a
Okay.
question about basically should we be studying AI or should we be studying the mind by building artificial intelligence systems? And then you gave me a really fascinating lecture on the free market, which is great, and got Dave activated, got me activated. Like that's terrific. Is the connection that you're seeing here is basically to say, uh, first of all, I will take it as given that this is a good thing to study. So let's move that off the table.
Okay.
The
Okay.
problem that you have with it is not that you shouldn't be studying it. The problem that you have with it is that this system that we have now is going to exploit that. That's what we need to fix. Is that how
Okay.
you got to the economics as the answer to this question?
Um,
Right. Yeah. I mean, I
yeah,
could
I
see
think
that
so.
path.
Okay.
That
I
certainly
think
that
I've
if we get AI soon, it's not going to be sold in a free market fashion. It's going to be
mhm,
owned by the people who create it, and they are going to do everything they possibly can to exclude everybody else, and so on.
mhm, mhm, mhm.
So unless we get ourselves some cool rules that would avoid that or help that or even it out or something,
Mm,
then I see Michael's objection. I see Michael's worry that if we as scientists further the development of this stuff while
mhm,
taking
mhm.
money from Google or any of the fangs, then we're contributing to this no less than if we were shooting missiles like that. And maybe I would want to.
I wouldn't go quite that far, but
Well, I was trying to turn
I
it
think he
back to
was
your
tweaking
original
you. Yeah.
position. Yeah,
yeah, right.
like that. And I mean, I would like to respond to Michael. I don't know how to do it. I don't have a demo, so I'm bullshit. But I would like to respond that if we do it bottom up in the right way, we will understand that the systems that we build have to be embedded within the systems that exist. And they will not be entirely new hierarchical structures. They will live on existing hierarchical structures. They may modify them and change them in various ways, like that. And my belief, my wish is that if we do that right, then the oligarchs will not be able to steal them because already the communities will be involved, the churches will be involved, the elementary schools will be involved, all of this because we will use the existing distributed computational structure of society to deploy this new stuff within. That's my answer.
Okay. And then I would sort of say, well, okay, how do you do that?
Uh, uh,
And
yeah,
and
well, so you want to see the demo, and
Yeah.
I do too.
you you know, there's a story that is, I haven't been able to find it in print again, but people were talking about science fiction in the late 50s and early 60s, and a group of people who were um, group of science fiction writers were saying, "Oh, what we got to do is we got to change the world. We got to," and someone was saying, "Well, what you need to do in order to change the world is to build an institution, and the best kind of institution is the church, and because you got fewer
Oh,
constraints on
see
churches,
where this is going.
and." Yeah, you do see where I'm going. You know, you can probably even predict which science fiction writer this is.
Yeah, Hubbard. Uh, uh,
Yeah,
uh,
exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. Well,
And
right.
so
He and Heinlein
so
had a
he
bet.
so he goes off and he starts Scientology, and it actually does build up. Now, I don't think it changed the world in quite the ways that at least that group of people were hoping, maybe what Hubbard hoped. But
Yeah, yeah, certainly it enriched a subset of those people quite
yeah,
handily. But yeah, and I agree. And we are way long, so we need to figure out a way to land this plane. But uh, uh,
hey,
uh,
I'm in the middle of this. I'm figuring I want to understand enough, and it's not just about how common sense knowledge works in the mind, because once you start looking at ethics, the problem is, how does an individual's mind fit in with the minds of all those other people in society? And what are these collective we's
yeah,
that we have in the society? What do they believe? And what they believe is the ethical knowledge that we have in our society. And how is that structured? How do we get that across? Um, and so I feel like that's a big, big, big problem. It's probably going to last longer than I will, but I can do what I can. Um, I'm probably not going to be able to build an implementation that will take over the world and transform it into an ethical society
demo.
anytime soon.
Demo small, demo small.
Right?
Like that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, Ben, that sounds great. And it's certainly, regardless of how much time each of us has, it
Right.
seems like that's the sort of thing we should be working for. So that's great. Yeah, I'm there. Uh,
As I
uh,
tell my students, you should think about what is the most important thing for you as a person with your resources and abilities. What's the most important thing for you to do? Then you should do that. Why would you do anything else?
Yeah, it's tough though. It's tough. Because then, well, when you do what someone else tells you, then you have an excuse. Oh, they told me. Whereas
Yeah,
if you just did it because you want it, then you got no place to turn. So it's scary. People have to get to that.
I know.
Uh, uh,
Growing up is tough.
Going tough as a bitch. Well, Ben, this has been super, super fun. But and thank you again for spending time with us and going through
Absolutely.
all of that's really great.
Well, it's been great talking with you. Thanks.
This was Computing Up. Thanks for listening.